Hello there. If you're listening to this story, chances are you've experienced the sting of failure too. Maybe you've lost someone you loved. Maybe you've lost faith in yourself. Or maybe you're just wondering, why do all my efforts still end in failure? Why does life seem to treat me this way? Today, I want to share with you a true story. No sugarcoating, no fairy tales. A story about failure, about pain, and most importantly, about rising again. My wife, the person I once loved most, left me at the very moment I hit rock bottom. I lost everything: my job, my money, my family, and my belief in myself. But it was from that very bottom that I learned 3 lessons that changed my life forever. If you're feeling lost, if you've ever been left behind, if you've ever failed, if you've ever lost everything, stay with me, because maybe, just maybe, my story could be the very first light for your new journey. The story of failure and divorce. I once thought I would have an ordinary life like everyone else. A stable job, a warm home, a loving wife by my side. And day after day, we lived together, sharing the smallest things, from simple meals to petty arguments that always ended in reconciliation. Our life was so peaceful that I never imagined it could shatter. But life gives no warnings. The bad things, they often come quietly, like a slow, persistent rain in the middle of the night. By the time you realize it, everything is already soaked through. It all started when my business venture failed. I had poured all my savings into a risky investment project, hoping to make a breakthrough, to build something greater for my family. I wanted her to be proud of me. I wanted us to have a better life. But life didn't go the way I planned. The project failed miserably. I lost everything, not just the money, but also my reputation, my confidence, and my self-respect. When I came home that night, carrying an old, worn-out bag stuffed with debt papers, she greeted me with a look that I will never forget. It wasn't anger. It wasn't blame. It was a cold, silent disappointment. We talked for a long time that night. Or rather, I desperately tried to salvage the shattered pieces of our marriage, while she remained mostly silent. In the end, she said one short sentence: "I can't live a life of failure with you." And then she left. The door closed. The room was empty. And for the first time in my life, I collapsed onto the floor and cried like a child. The darkest days, the days after she left, were the darkest days of my life. I woke up every morning not knowing why I should even get out of bed. The world felt empty. Food had no taste. The sunlight outside seemed harsh, almost mocking. I walked through the days like a ghost. Friends avoided me. Family members gave me those pitiful glances, the kind that said, "I told you so," even if their mouths never spoke it. At night, I would sit alone, staring at the ceiling. Memories flooded in. Her laughter, our plans for the future, the simple dreams we once shared. All gone. There were moments when I hated myself so much that I couldn't bear to look in the mirror. There were nights when I wondered, would it be easier if I simply disappeared? I was broken. Completely, utterly broken. But somehow, somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered, "This is not how your story ends." It wasn't loud. It wasn't convincing at first, but it was persistent. A small ember in the ashes, refusing to die. And one night, sitting there in the darkness of my tiny apartment, I made a decision. I would fight, not for her, not even for the life we had lost. I would fight for myself, because if I didn't, no one else would. The 3 things I did to change my life. The first thing, I faced my truth. The very first thing I had to do was stop lying to myself. It was easy, so easy, to blame others, the economy, my bad luck, even her. But deep down, I knew. It was me. I was the one who had rushed into risky investments without fully understanding them. I was the one who had tied my entire identity to success, thinking that if I failed, I was worthless. I was the one who had neglected my own emotional growth, always chasing money, recognition, applause. Facing that truth felt like swallowing broken glass. Painful, humiliating. But it was also strangely freeing. Because once I admitted that I was the problem, I realized something even more powerful. I could also be the solution. No one was coming to save me. No magic miracle would fix my life. It had to start with me, with my choices, my habits, my mindset. And that realization was the first brick I laid on the foundation of a new life. The second thing, I rebuilt myself, one small victory at a time. When you're shattered, you can't rebuild your life overnight. You can't leap from brokenness to success in a day or even a year. I learned to focus on tiny victories, getting out of bed before 7 a.m., making my own breakfast, reading one chapter of a book that could teach me something, applying for one job even when rejection seemed certain, saving even $5 a week. At first, these actions felt laughable, insignificant, childish, but over time, they stacked up, day by day, brick by brick. Each small victory whispered to me, "You are not finished yet." I wasn't the man who had been abandoned anymore. I was a man who was fighting, a man who, despite the odds, refused to die inside. That fight, those tiny victories, became my new identity. The third thing, I found a new purpose beyond myself. Pain can make you selfish. When you're hurting, it's easy to spiral into self-pity, into endless questions like, why me? What did I do to deserve this? But somewhere along the way, I realized something else. Maybe my story wasn't just about me. Maybe my failure, my deepest wound, could be a lantern for someone else wandering in the dark. So I began to share. First, quietly, journaling, posting anonymous messages online, speaking at small community groups. Then, louder, mentoring others, teaching young entrepreneurs not just about business, but about resilience. And the more I gave away what I had learned, the more I healed. I realized that purpose isn't found by chasing success. It's found by using your scars to light someone else's path. And when you live like that, with an open heart, with honesty and service, success comes. Not as a prize you grab, but as a gift you're entrusted with. The 3 things I did to succeed. First thing, I learned to accept reality without complaining. The very first thing I had to do, and honestly, it was the hardest, was to accept reality. I had failed. I had lost everything. Even the person I loved most had walked away from me. There were no more excuses. No one left to blame. One night I sat alone in an empty room facing myself. No more hiding, no more lying to myself. I looked straight into the truth. I failed, and it was my fault. You know what? When you stop blaming the circumstances, other people, or bad luck, that's when you truly start taking back control of your life. I cried a lot that night, but those tears were no longer a sign of weakness. They were a cleansing, a way of washing away all the resentment, self-pity, and bitterness that had built up inside me over the years. I learned my first lesson, simple yet profound. You cannot rebuild your life if you're still busy blaming others. The next morning, I told myself, no more complaining. I will act, even if it was just the smallest action. Second thing, I rebuilt myself through tiny habits. After accepting the truth, I started rebuilding myself, beginning with the tiniest habits, not by doing grand things right away, not by setting huge goals that would terrify me, but through small actions. Actions that might have seemed meaningless to others, but for me, at that moment, they were a matter of life and death. I started by waking up every morning at 5 a.m. It didn't matter what time I went to bed. It didn't matter how I felt. It didn't matter if it was raining or shining outside. 5 a.m. I got up, splashed cold water on my face to wake up, took a slow walk around the neighborhood, breathed deeply. In those early mornings when the world was still cloaked in darkness, I felt something I had never truly noticed before. Life is miraculous. No matter how much pain you felt yesterday, the dawn still comes. A new day still begins. The chance to change is still waiting, if you have the patience to reach for it. I also started reading again, not for entertainment, but to rebuild my faith in myself, to seek real knowledge. Every day, I read at least 20 pages. At first, it was books on life skills, then business books, and then biographies of great people. People who had fallen hard, just like me, but had found the strength to stand up again. Each page, each early morning, each small step, they were like bricks I was laying down, slowly rebuilding the foundation of my broken life. Slowly, patiently. No one applauded, no one cheered. It was just me and my silent perseverance. And little by little, I felt myself growing stronger. Not in my muscles, but in my inner spirit. Confidence slowly returned. Not loudly, not hurriedly, but quietly, like a small flame that kept burning even through heavy winds. Third thing, I learned to give before expecting to receive. The third thing, and perhaps the most important, I learned how to give. When you fail, the natural instinct is to close off, to think only of yourself, to desperately find a way to survive. But I realized something. The fastest way out of pain is not to shrink inwards, but to open up. I started reaching out to people who were also struggling, just like me. An old friend who had just gone through a divorce. Another friend who had just lost his job. A neighbor who was struggling to start a small business. I shared with them what I'd learned. I listened to their stories. I helped them in whatever small ways I could. A piece of advice, a handshake, a coffee, and a heartfelt conversation. No expectations, no calculations, simply giving. And then something miraculous happened. When I gave encouragement, I received joy. When I gave help, I received opportunity. An old friend, after hearing my advice, invited me to join a small business project. I joined, pouring my heart into it. Not for the money, but because I wanted to live a life of meaning. At first, it was just a tiny online shop. But with dedication, sincerity, and the lessons from my past failures, we slowly grew. And after 2 years, we built a small company, one I could be truly proud of. No one called me a failure anymore. And most importantly, I no longer saw myself as a failure. Conclusion: the biggest lesson. Today, as I sit in front of this screen and share my story with you, I want to leave you with something simple. Failure is not the end. Failure is just a chapter in your story. You decide whether it becomes the final chapter, or just a stepping stone to something greater. It's all up to you. The 3 things I did, accepting the truth, rebuilding from small habits, and learning to give, saved my life. It's not miraculous. It's not quick. but it's real, and it works. If you are in the darkest days of your life, remember, don't complain. Start over, even with the smallest steps, and never stop opening your heart to this life, because you are stronger than you think. And tomorrow, a new day is waiting for you, just as it waited for me. Call to action. A message to yourself. If you've made it this far, I know. You're not the type to give up easily. You may be in pain. You may be lost. You may be alone in your own journey. But trust me, as long as you believe in something good ahead, you still have a chance to turn your life around. I don't know what kind of pain you're facing. Loss in love? Failure in your career? Loneliness in a crowded city? No matter what it is, I want you to know, you're not alone. There are so many people out there, like me, who've fallen, who felt hopeless, who've been deeply hurt. But we got back up. And you will too. If you're hearing these words, and if, in your heart, even just a little bit, you long to start over, comment below. I will not give up. Not for me, not for anyone else, but because you owe yourself a better life. Write it down to remember. Write it down to commit to yourself. Write it down so that from this moment you know you've chosen the path of resilience. And if you want, hit the subscribe button, not just to receive more inspiring stories like this, but to remind yourself that you are not alone on this journey. We, the ones who've fallen, are quietly creating new lives. Stronger, brighter, more beautiful. Goodbye. Until we meet again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I'm not special. I'm just one of the millions out there who've fallen, who've suffered, who've been desperate. But I chose not to give up. And I believe with this heart, with this determination, you can do the same. Life will never be easy. But every day we dare to dream, dare to act, dare to love. We are winning. I'll see you in the next stories. And remember, no matter how tired you are today, no matter how dark it feels right now, the light is waiting for you. Ahead. Just don't give up. I believe in you.